Welcome to the Near Memo, a weekly conversation about search, social, and commerce. What happened, why it matters, and the implications for local. So, Mike, we were talking also before we started recording about an interesting piece that I included in the newsletter. A guy who is now the CEO of Fabric, who was at both Amazon and Google, talking about why he thinks that Google has lost the e-commerce battle, the retail commerce battle, to Amazon, and what the factors are.
Yeah, his name was Faisal Masood, and
yes.
The title of the article was the last e-commerce duel between Amazon and Google. And he brought up the obvious fact that Google has, largely through the need for income generation and increasing revenue, has increasingly destroyed the value of the SERPs with ads. And he felt that that was a fundamental issue with their failing in products. Buried at the end of the article, though, was that he noted that to have a shot for success going forward, it needs to address deficiencies in culture, which David and I have talked a lot about. But he then went on to say that they need to embrace the notoriously difficult retail business model, including logistics, which is something that Google has never wanted to do, which is to get their hands dirty. Although we're seeing it now more with the manufacturing of both the home and the phone products, where they are actually finally, after it's almost 10 years since they bought Motorola, finally having some small measure of success in manufacturing. They've never done well in the real world. And so while I do think that ads compromised the quality of their product, I think ultimately the loss was because Amazon was a vertically integrated retailer and they built their web search around that. So I don't see how Google, can compete with Amazon in that arena. His thought was that Amazon's going to fail too for the same demands.
Well, that Amazon is going to get greedy and screw up its user experience.
Which has already happened
as well.
Which has already happened, at least according to one observer that I think we all know, John Henshaw, who now runs Coywolf, former founder of Raven Tools. So he's actually built an Amazon search engine, which I think uses Google on the back end, because he's found the product results to be so littered with ads on Amazon, and that Amazon's algorithm simply doesn't return what you're looking for. So I think that the degrading in experience is already happening on Amazon.
Well, one of the points that Masood made that I don't think you brought up yet was this user experience is better on Amazon than on Google. That on Google, you have to click through to a retailer site, and then there's a multi-stage process there. Whereas on Amazon, it's a one-click buy. They've got your payment vehicle, et cetera, and so it's just a cleaner, better experience. Not to mention that customer service is much better, generally speaking, on Amazon, and you're dealing with a disparate bunch of retailers on Google. So that was another point.
Right. And the one area that we've noted in the past where Google has done well is when they did create this integrated experience around food that I wrote about on Near Media last year, where it was a magical purchase experience, even though they didn't control the delivery or the production stack. They were able to put together a flow that really worked in the restaurant world. The question I have is, can they replicate that in other arenas? We know they've partnered with Shopify and WooCommerce and these others to bring more products in. They just recently released this product, I think today or yesterday, they announced it, the shop feature in the SERPs that I think is in today's newsletter. But, the question I have is, can they put together a flow and a group of customers, businesses that have an adequate inventory that they could compete in the product search to once again become a destination for product search? And, they've partnered with they're working in local, they're working with all these other efforts. I'm just not sure that I read that Best Buy is creating their own advertising on their site. It's like, the question I have is, who is going to partner with Google to give them the ability to compete, even if Google controls more of the stack, like they did in the restaurant thing.
Well, I think it's going to be interesting.
Well, I mean,
Go ahead, Greg.
Go ahead, David. No, go ahead.
It's going to be an interesting dynamic. Obviously, there's going to be plenty of negotiations between Google and all of these, traditional brands like Best Buy, like Target, like Walmart, who are offering their own marketplaces to some extent. I don't think, Greg, you and I were talking about this, less vertical retailers like Walmart and Target, I think, would be extremely eager for the scale of eyeballs that Google can bring. And I think that the purchase experience, I mean, there's already a checkbox for buy on Google in Google Shopping. And I think that there's, whether Google ever gets into the actual fulfillment game the way, Amazon Services LLC does for, certain Amazon Prime orders, I don't see that happening either. No. But the ability to fulfill an order with effectively 2-day shipping for Walmart and Target and some of these other sort of major horizontal e-commerce sites, I think is a real possibility. So I think that I'm never one to give up on Google if its ambitions are strong enough that they'll figure out a way, just because of the scale of eyeballs that they've got.
Well, Target and Walmart both have fulfillment vehicles, right? I mean, Walmart started they started, I forget what they're calling it, I forget what the service is, but they're going to outsource that, or they're not outsourcing it, they're making it available to third parties. Yep. And Target has shipped and is doing a lot of fulfillment from stores. So I mean, I think those guys are in a much better position than Google is to do fulfillment. And Google ran Google Express for years and attempted to be kind of the fulfillment partner, or a delivery partner, not a fulfillment partner, a delivery partner for a lot of retailers as the anti-Amazon. Mm-hmm. They tried to build a coalition of traditional retailers to go against Amazon, and that fell apart. My question is Google's willingness to follow through or to commit to things. I mean, we've seen historically that Google has a lot of good ideas. They'll launch things, but they don't commit to them. They're not willing to do what it takes to see them over a long period of time, or to devote the resources to build momentum and an audience there, except in certain core areas that are already successful.
Yeah,
this is their culture, though.
Yeah.
They if it doesn't succeed the way search succeeded, which was virally, they're not that interested in it, and they give it a fairly short time frame. They test it. Their newsletter product, I don't think it was out
3
for
months,
90 days.
Well, a lot of those 120 products are just, one and done. It's like they launch them with great fanfare. Nothing else happens after that. They atrophy and then they shutter them.
Yeah, I think the difference for me here is that their market position relative to Amazon has changed substantially in the last 8 to 10 years. I think Amazon, would not have been the number one product search engine 8 or 10 years ago, and now it is everybody's default. And so they may now finally see it as the real existential threat that I think it poses for, at least in the CPG space, to Google. So,
well, Eric Schmidt made that comment about Amazon being Google's number one competitor, I believe, and it was like in 2014, I think is when he made that comment, and people were like, "What are you talking about? Yeah. Amazon's not a search engine." But it turned out to be really true, really prescient. And you may be right that they may now really see this as such a significant threat that they're willing to do more or do uncharacteristic things. But the question is, where will they do them? I mean, I had previously thought that their combination of local inventory and e-commerce was a really smart strategy. And I think, they could build on that, but I don't think that that's enough now. Mm-hmm. Just showing products from both local retailers and e-commerce is enough to undermine Amazon's kind of brand equity and momentum. And sort of speaking of that, unless anybody wants to say anything more about the Google versus Amazon,
we're not going to interrupt your segue.
Thanks for joining David, Mike, and Greg. To stay on top of the latest developments in local, subscribe to our newsletter at nearmedia.co. We'll see you next week.